Hello, I'm Jordan. So I recently discovered a booktube channel called Tom LA Books, and he's doing this project where he is covering one canto from Dante's Divine Comedy, roughly one a week until he goes through the entire text. And it is an incredibly awesome project. You guys should seriously check it out if you haven't already. The dude is extremely insightful and thoughtful and learned, and he just loves the book. So it's great. It's been a lot of fun to watch. I just discovered it recently, like a couple days ago. He also created a tag called the Divine Comedy tag, I believe. I wasn't tagged in it because I don't, the Divine Comedy Reader tag. I wasn't tagged in it because I don't really know a whole lot of people on BookTube yet, but it's a great tag. I discovered it through Jack's channel, the Rambling Raconteur, which is another great channel you should check out if you don't, if you're not already aware of it. And it's a great tag, so I thought I'd give it a try. The first question is, or the first prompt is, Virgil and Dante, one of your favorite books featuring a master-pupil relationship between two of the main characters. And what came to mind for this is a relationship in The Brothers Karamazov by Dostoevsky. The youngest brother in this, Alyosha, who's kind of the holy fool, the novice, the innocent to a certain extent in the novel, is considering becoming a monk. And his mentor is the elder Zosima. The reason this came to mind is because there is a chunk in the middle of this book, which is Zosima's kind of life story. You're getting it second or third hand, like everything else in this book, so you kind of have to take it with a grain of salt. But it is one of the most beautiful pieces of writing regarding religion and faith and spirituality that I've ever read. I was going to actually read a couple quotes from it, but when I was reading them out loud, they kind of sound a little trite or hallmarky. But I think that's kind of what makes it so powerful. There is a wonderful elegance and simplicity and kind of a common sense quality, a folksy common sense quality to the spirituality, which kind of forms the moral center of this book. And it's especially powerful when it's kind of set against the backdrop of the more sordid cast of characters. So that's what I'm going to say for that one. It's a great book if you haven't read it. The second tag is The Psychedelic Eagle, a book that fired up your visual imagination more than others. For this, I'm going to choose the Gormenghast novels by Mervyn Peake. I'm getting a mirror image thing going on here. I'm not sure what that's all about. I tried to fix it, but I don't know how to work technology, so it is what it is. Anyways, this is, I feel like it has a following, but it seems kind of fairly unknown, which I think is a shame because this is an extremely strange, dark, grotesque, very funny, kind of Dickensian and hallucinogenic series of books. I can't think of a book that has better descriptive language. It is absolutely mesmerizing to read. It's the kind of book you can kind of fall into. It feels like you're watching it. It's really beautiful and strange. It's kind of difficult to talk. It is a fantasy series, but it's not high fantasy at all. It's kind of got a gothic, but also tongue-in-cheek quality to it. I can't really describe it, but if you haven't read it, you should check it out. Prompt 3 is Count Ugolino, a book you read with such graphic and horrific descriptions that you will never forget them. For this, I am going to choose Blood Meridian by Cormac McCarthy. Now, I didn't realize until I started watching BookTube how controversial McCarthy is for readers. He seems to be kind of taken as representative of dude bro lit, which is a term that I dislike, the same way that I dislike the term chick lit. I feel like referring to something in a derogatory way based on what you assume to be its target audience is kind of lazy and unfair and mean and just not very productive. And in any case, this book has a lot more going on than just like machismo or, I don't know, stoic suppression of emotions or whatever it is that people think counts as dude bro lit. It is a very disturbing book because it is about among other things, the violence, extreme violence that the United States was founded on, but also the violence that basically any congregation of human beings is founded on. It's a very, very cynical book. There's a dense, oppressive, nihilistic atmosphere to this thing, which is quite disturbing, even aside from the fact that it's extremely violent. But it is a good book, if a very heavy one. Prompt number 4 is The Cinematic Archangel. What book that's not been adapted for cinema would you make into a movie or a TV series if you were a producer with unlimited financial means? What I'm going to say for this, I don't have a copy of it, which is a shame, is Ursula Le Guin's The Left Hand of Darkness. I have read a fair amount of science fiction in my day, and The Left Hand of Darkness is my personal favorite space opera that I've read. And I do think it would make a great movie for a number of reasons. First of all, the spectacle of it. It's set on a kind of an Arctic world, and there's, journeys and kingdoms and kind of your standard exotic locations, kind of your standard space opera material. But it's also, I think the time is right for an adaptation of this because of the things that it explores, like gender and nationhood, authoritarianism, bureaucracy, the relationship of the individual with the collective. It's a great novel. It might be my favorite science fiction novel. So that's what I would choose for that. Prompt number 5. Prompt number 5. Your favorite book by a pre-Christian philosopher or a book about ancient Greece that you liked. For this, I'm going to choose 2 relatively unknown Shakespeare plays, his 2 Greek plays, Troilus and Cressida and Timon of Athens. Timon of Athens, I am of the opinion that it wasn't written entirely by Shakespeare. It seems like the first couple acts, I can't find Shakespeare anywhere in there. But the second half of the play is fantastic and unusual because it's basically one giant rant and curse coming from the misanthropic Timon of Athens. It's great fun to read, and it's just a slew of vitriolic hate speech. But it's Shakespeare, so of course it's fun. And the other one, Troilus and Cressida, is also kind of unknown. It's one of his problem plays, meaning it's kind of a comedy on the surface, but it's also deeply cynical, and the happy ending is not. It's highly ironic in its happiness. So yeah, I need to give more thought if I'm going to put more thought or more articulate discussion of Shakespeare. Maybe a separate video someday. Okay, now we have prompt 6, Paolo e Francesca. A book of any genre with a love story that you particularly liked as a part of the central plot or not. I really like this prompt because it gives me a chance to talk about what might be my favorite novel ever, and that's Wuthering Heights by Emily Bronte. I've heard some talk going around BookTube that this is not a love story, it's a revenge story, which I think is patently not true. This is absolutely a love story. What I think is meant by that is that it's not a pretty love story. But Catherine and Heathcliff are more in love than anyone has ever been in the history of the world. To the point where it becomes something almost inhuman, and it's their passion is so intense that it not only destroys their own lives, but destroys the lives of everyone around them. So it's not pretty, but it is a spectacle and an awe-inspiring love story, in my opinion. I absolutely love this book. It's a book that I can reread over and over and over again. We're going to move on to prompt number 7. Name a book that you loved, any genre, whose protagonist leads a group of people to follow his or her courage and ambition into an adventure. This one I had a couple things I was considering doing. I was going to talk about Watership Down, which is a fun kind of fantasy book, but what I ended up thinking of at the last minute was Robert Louis Stevenson's Kidnapped, which follows a young man named David Balfour, I think, who is kidnapped and is essentially going to be sold into slavery, but then he runs into a swashbuckling Jacobite by the name of Alan Breck, who I believe is based on an actual historical figure. I might be wrong about that. And Alan Breck is not the protagonist of Kidnapped, but to me, he is absolutely the highlight. He is a vain, slightly selfish, kind of a foppish, but very, very courageous and loyal character. And I feel like he's kind of the heart and soul of the book, particularly the relationship between David and Alan, which I would argue has certain erotic or at least romantic qualities to it, are what kept me interested in that book. But it's also just a really fun read. Robert Louis Stevenson always is. We're going to move on to prompt number 8. Saint Bernard the Poet. What is your favorite poetry book and translation? I had kind of a hard time with this one because I do read a fair amount of poetry, but almost none of it is in translation, because it seems to me, and I'm probably wrong about this, but it seems to me that poetry is so precise and so kind of caught up in the peculiarities of whatever language it was written in that it's not translatable, which obviously can't be true. But I have read a number of epic poems in translation, including the Divine Comedy, which I have to admit I wasn't crazy about. I think that was largely due to the translation, actually. So I do want to return to that someday with a different translation. But what I ended up choosing was the Horace Gregory translation of Ovid's Metamorphoses. This is a great epic poem. To me, it has the feel of like a book of fairy tales or something like that, and that's a little disjointed and sprawling, and yet it is wonderfully and beautifully tied together, if for no other reason than because of the language, which is absolutely magnificent. I want to make a point, I've only read this once, but I want to make a point of trying to read this every spring, because it seems like great spring reading, because the core theme is obviously change and metamorphosis, and all of the terrible, wonderful things that can go along with that. So, great book as well. And that's going to do it. So, I think, well, the last prompt is to tag someone, but like I said, I'm not a huge member of the community yet. So if you're seeing this and you haven't done the tag, feel free to do it. Also, make sure you check out Tom's channel, and also Jack's channel. The Rambling Raconteur is another fantastic channel. So anyways, thanks for watching. Hope you have a good day.